Hey everybody, welcome back to the PetaPixel podcast. I'm joined by my buddy Chris Nichols, and my friend Jaron Schneider is here as well. It was a little touch and go as to whether or not we were going to be able to do one this week, but I am thrilled that I get to catch up and do this podcast. It's always a high point of my week, and as always, I'm going to kick it off by learning something about my co-hosts on the show. So, guys, I want to know, we've done, thanks to our jobs, extensive traveling. We've been all over the place, but even in our personal lives as well. I want to know, what is your favorite place that you have ever been?
So partly I want to say Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, but no, that's nobody.
Be. No one has ever given that response in the history.
So you said Moose Jaw, and that is the name that in Bones, the television show, that David Boreanaz would choose as his undercover last name was Moose Jaw.
Moose Jaw. Well, he's probably from Moose Jaw. No, I would say, it's kind of an easy answer, but although we've traveled across many, many places and I've been there a few times, Tokyo is still probably my favorite city of all time to visit. It's humongous, but it's beautiful, and it's got energy, but sometimes it's quiet, and it's just the greatest metropolitan area on earth. And everybody's lovely. And so, yes, Tokyo is probably one of the high points of the travels that I've been on.
What do you got, Jaron?
Well, I really enjoy a lot of Europe, and I studied abroad there, and I've returned there in my adult life. So
That's where you learned to make your lasagna, correct?
Yeah, I love in Florence. I love harkening back.
You make Florentian lasagna? Oh, that's not fair. I can't compete with that.
You can't. I think you've already lost.
No, but we're gonna have the lasagna off. But
this was discussed last week. It's happening.
Oh.
Yeah. I'm actually gonna go with Chris. I also like Geneva quite a bit. If anyone has ever been to Geneva, it's a wonderful city. But I'm gonna go with Chris and head back to Japan. But I'm gonna pick Hiroshima. Is my favorite city in Japan.
Oh, I see.
I've never been there.
I would like.
I've watched
to go back.
Hiroshima Mon Amour twice. Does that count?
That has almost nothing to do with actual Hiroshima.
Oh, okay. Still pretty
hot. The city
hot.
Feels very nice. I was just standing around in Hiroshima. I was like, this place feels good. So great. The museum is just a terror, but the rest of it is great.
But in a profound way, yes.
Yeah, well, they have mannequins of people with their skin falling off. So it's it's actually really terrible. But you're understanding what happened. And at any rate,
don't we all have mannequins in our house of people with their skin falling off?
I was really waffling because I was thinking Tokyo, and then Chris stole that, and I'd love to see more of Japan. So right before this started, I was clicking through Costa Rica pictures, and that got me thinking, is that my favorite? I had an amazing time on that trip, and that's one of them that I'm always because I always look at our show as I'm doing research for one-day places I'm going to bring my family. And the top two that I've taken away from that are Tokyo and Costa Rica. And Costa Rica would be the vacation one. So I'm going to go with that. If I want to just chill out, it was reasonable, lovely. Incredible beaches out there, and a lot of ceviche, which is one of my favorite foods. Seafood. Love it.
Lamb. Seafood.
Lamb. Seafood. Why is no one doing they had the double down that was the chicken sandwich with the chicken as two pieces. No one's done lamb with two pieces of lamb with seafood sandwiched in the middle. That would be the Jordan signature. So
Jordan,
you guys make your lasagna. You guys have your lasagna throwdown, and I'm going to be roasting some lamb and jamming some shrimp in between.
Jordan wants
it's going to be transcendent.
Yeah.
Sheep and deep. My God, that's a legitimately good idea. It finally happened, everyone.
You called it the sheep and deep?
The sheep and deep.
Wow, that's very good. And you just came up with that right now.
We're never going to find a higher note to cue up the intro on. So thank you, Chris, for that.
You're welcome.
Oh, man. All right. Let's, you know what? I'm not going to tell everyone what to expect in this episode. It's going to be a surprise. So let's just let's get right into it.
All right.
start this podcast by saying thank you to our sponsor, OM System. In the world of photography, versatility and quality are paramount. OM System stands at the forefront of this revolution, offering a series of high-performance pro-grade lenses, all featuring a constant f4 aperture, weather sealing, and are designed to meet the needs of the discerning photographer. That's you, Chris. You're a discerning photographer. Excelling in low excelling in low light conditions with superior optics. Each lens in this lineup is crafted to offer something unique. Whether you're capturing expansive landscapes, focusing on fine details, or anything in between, OM System M Zuiko lenses ensure your shots are not just captured, but captured flawlessly, even in the most punishing environments. So let's talk about some of those lenses.
Yeah, speaking of punishing environments, Costa Rica is actually incredibly lovely. There's nothing punishing about it. And it turns out, looking through some of the photos that we took, I shot a lot on the Zuiko Digital ED12 to 45 f4 Pro. Compact powerhouse, I love that word. Perfect for those who like to travel light, which we were doing. The image quality is beautiful, no compromises at all. Very versatile focal length. I mean, remember, you are getting a little bit more in that long range, 24 to 90. I think I even took a beautiful portrait of Jaron with the 90 millimeter equivalent on there. So it's like having several lenses in one. Great for street photography, landscapes, close-up shots, really good macro capabilities. So that's what you want out of a good general purpose lens.
I'm going to tag in like a cage match right now and talk about the 8 to 25 millimeter pro lens, f4 as well. I'm not reading the copy because I love this lens. An ultra wide to normal lenses are my new favorite focal length. I want them in every mount.
That's right.
It is a wonderful lens with a proper manual focus clutch. So wonderful for video work or any kind of repeatable, if you want to go do astro or something like that, you've got that clutch that's not going to shift when you power the lens down. It's sharp edge to edge. Just a wonderful optic, incredibly compact, and a treasure. A micro four thirds treasure.
Okay, but would you say it's designed for those who enjoy wide-angle photography?
I would also say that.
Okay, could you shoot stunning landscapes and architecture with its wide field of view?
I would agree with that statement as well,
Yeah,
Chris.
does it give you like the entire scene in front of you able to capture with like really good sharpness right to the edge?
Looking back, it's done that consistently for me.
Great. Well, then there's our copy covered. Thank you, Jordan, for going off the road, off the rails. Jeez. So finally, another lens that I did not use in Costa Rica is the Zuiko Digital ED40 to 150 f4 Pro, but I have used it in other situations, and it is excellent. I mean, that 90 to 300 mil full frame equivalent, nice and bright telephoto lens, testament to OM System's commitment to excellence. Whether you're shooting sports, wildlife, really nice portrait lens as well. Focal range gives you the flexibility to capture those distant details with precision and clarity from afar.
So all right, well, those are a lot of wonderful lenses, but would there be any kind of seasonal promo, Jaron?
What a segue. Whether you're just starting out or you're a seasoned pro, OM System lenses are about pushing boundaries, exploring further, and capturing life as you see it. They're built for those who demand excellence and versatility from their gear. Spring savings are now in bloom, as Jordan was insinuating. Now through April 28th, OM System is offering an instant rebate of up to $200 off these lenses.
$200 reduce?
No, actual dollars. Dollar dues are what Canadian dollars are.
Yes.
American dollars.
100 toonies.
A big thank you to OM System for sponsoring this episode. And for more information about these lenses and others from OM System, visit your local authorized retailer or visit explore.omsystem.com/PetaPixel. Link in the description below. And thank you again. It. Yeah, that was. I was asked if that was too long, and I said no. It was not.
That was
long.
Adorable.
No, I think that was an outstanding ad read, and we should all give ourselves a pat on the back.
Now let's touch ourselves. Now let's touch ourselves with our next news story here.
I think we should touch other things because
and touch the listeners.
My word. Canon has created an accessible exhibit that features photography that you can touch. It's designed for people with vision impairment. This is a really cool project that's going to be taking place Friday, April 5th through Sunday, April 7th. It's called The World Unseen. It'll be at the Somerset House in London. So for anyone who is in England right now this month, you should definitely check this out.
Yes.
It's welcome to all visitors, whether they are blind-sighted or partially sighted. And so the idea is it's not just if you're blind, this is the only way you can enjoy it. They've actually made it so that if you
They're
have
not going to check at the door. Yeah.
No. Jeez. Yeah, to kick you out. If you can see, leave. No, they've created it so that you can see pictures differently even if you have perfect vision. So like it's designed to like help. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, it's interesting because It's a combination of many different things, right? So, I mean, yes, in some cases the photos are printed with raised almost three-dimensional designs, really, which is quite interesting. But also they're doing things like audio descriptions, there's Braille, there's just soundscapes. So there's many different ways to take in this artwork. And I think that's really quite beautiful.
Yeah.
We're talking famous, like award-winning photographers. The Canon has reprinted a lot of their photos here.
Yeah, I'd love to see this as a precedent where we see this, traveling quite a bit, because it'd be great, to go to a gallery and just have even some of the odd like signature photos of that particular photographer presented this way. I think that's a really cool idea. I have no idea how much it costs to actually. I'd love to know, like, what does a 16 by 20 raised edge print actually cost to produce?
Yeah, and I want to know what it goes into that. Like, how do they even make that happen? It's very interesting.
It's paper mache. That's the secret.
They made they're using like proprietary software, unique printers that not the first time they've done this, but it's interesting that it's like a special printing process to just build up those layers and still maintain color accuracy. And it's very interesting.
It's just like those like touch books that my daughter had, when she's a baby, with like the feel this and it's got a different texture. This is the artistic grown-up version of that, and I dig it.
Like a picture of a bunny, but it's got fuzzy.
But it's got like fuzzy fur on it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it works. She's very smart. Good job, Fuzzy Books.
Oh man. Okay. Well, I just wanted to share that with everyone because I thought it was neat. We don't really do photography, and most visual arts are almost by their very nature exclusive to those who can see. And I really think that doing anything you can for those who maybe don't necessarily get to enjoy photography was a really neat endeavor. Okay, let's talk about how Sony finally listened to specifically you two.
It was just us.
Finally gave, just you guys. Nobody else complained. Only you guys were constantly.
Have we not figured this out yet?
It's weird. Gerald Undone said nothing about this over the last 2 years. Yeah.
For anyone listening, this is sarcasm. Sony has finally added new features to old cameras. They've been threatening to do this for a couple months now, and they finally did do it. Before we talk about all the things that seemingly went wrong with that, let's talk about all the things that they were hoping to get right. So what do you guys think of the features that they added to these cameras? Tell us what cameras they are and what features you're excited about in each.
Well, I mean, the big one for me, the A7S III and the A1 are cameras that are like extremely capable for video, but they haven't received a bunch of the software features that we've seen going to more recent, even very entry-level cameras like their, ZV vlogging cameras have things like breathing correction. That's the big one for me that I think is really important, because a lot of Sony's high-end lenses, they're letting them breathe now and just saying like, don't worry, we have software to correct this. But if your camera doesn't support it, then you just have a lens that's breathing all the time. I think the C2PA support is really important, and I'm really happy to see it in more than just, I was kind of expecting it would just be the A1 that saw this. I'm surprised the A7R5 is not on the list. Is that correct for C2PA support? Because I could see that being, like a very common professional tool, one of the most well-rounded lenses or bodies in their stable. That really surprised me. But it's nice to see the A7S III and the A1 now is kind of at feature parity with a lot of the more recent cameras. I was getting very annoyed with Sony's like, look, if you want the latest feature, get the latest camera, even if it's a step down from the model that you're currently using.
Yeah, I feel like, it's nice that they're recognizing a lot of the older cameras. I mean, for example, like the A7 IV doesn't really get much change because it's already quite modern, but it's nice they're giving a lot of love to the old cameras. The A1, it's a mishmash. I mean, the C2PA stuff seems to be more spread out across all these models, but a lot of the cameras, it's very specific what they needed. And that's nice to see that they're actually addressing it. Like the A1 gets a lot of sort of quality of life improvements.
And a lot of connectivity stuff as well, which is great. That's really important to those
data,
people.
Knowing what lenses you're using when you're recording video, and that kind of stuff. The A9, on the other hand, or A7S III are getting more what you would call like actual shooting changes, whether it be faster continuous burst rates or 4K, DCP kind of stuff. So it's nice to see that they're really targeting each camera, improving what those people need. Because sometimes the company will just do like a blanket firmware update where all the cameras get 3 new features, and you're like, yeah. that doesn't really rectify very much for us. So it's nice they're saying, look, this is the weakness of this camera. We've specifically addressed that. So that's always a positive thing.
Yeah,
if you give Sony a hard time, they'll be like, wow, watch this. Out of spite, they will fix things for you really well.
Yeah, that is their personality. And I do think we should make a cartoon character of Sony going like, why you?
I'll show you.
Yeah, that we can drop every time they do this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like us saying like Sony has no 8512. That's so annoying. And then inevitably they're going to drop it and we can use that cartoon. That'd be great.
Yeah. Sony's a child that completely responds to reverse psychology. It's just exactly right.
Well, all of that sounds great, but unfortunately, it didn't all go smoothly. So, so let's talk about all that. First, due to an issue with Alpha 1 firmware's update, they pulled it. So you can't get it now. We don't, at the time of we're recording this message was still up, so I'm not certain when they're going to put it back. And then also, we were told initially, and the first press release said the Alpha 9.3 firmware update would arrive on April 9th. However, like at the last second, like right after we published, so like actually no, just later in April, air quotes. And then that's not even the end of it. There's more. The grocery store that I've been shopping at with my mom here in my hometown it's Nob Hill, Rayleigh's, whatever. One of the checkers there has been there my entire life, and he's an avid photographer. He owns all of Sony's latest stuff. He downloaded the firmware update for his A7S III, and now his camera regularly bricks. He can only unbrick it by pulling the battery. So something is wrong, and he's like, I don't know what's going on. Do you know what's going on? I'm like, I don't know what's going on, but I'm happy to use my platform to tell people that this is a problem. So this is not going that smoothly. Perhaps it's because Sony is not used to doing firmware updates like this, where they add new features and they're a little rusty at it, or they need some more practice. But it is definitely not flawlessly executed. Apparently, there are groups that are talking about he's not the only one having this issue with the A7S III. So I do hope that Sony can iron these problems out for them.
Well, and if you're doing a professional gig, maybe just hold off on doing the firmware update until you've got a little window in your schedule, or until they do revisions of some of these updates as well. Unfortunately, I was really looking forward to installing the C2PA, but I don't have a camera body capable of that. But what I'm hearing online is it is quite a process. It's separate from just installing the firmware. You actually need to go online and activate that functionality separately. So keep that in mind as well. It's not going to be a quick slap it on the firmware update on your camera, and you're going to have access to that functionality.
Still, it does kind of solve the mystery. People were wondering like, oh, C2PA, is that going to need to be like a hardware already installed? But apparently not. Like apparently cameras envisioned even before it, they can be updated through software, although maybe a lengthy process. But that does give hope that we'll see this come out to a lot of other models.
Yeah, it seems very processor dependent, because we heard specifically from Leica that it required hardware the way their processors are set up.
Leica told us, this is why the SL3 doesn't have it. I asked them, like, are you going to add it to the SL3? And they said no. They believe that the method that they want to use that makes it more reliable is to have a chip inside specifically designed to do it. Yeah. So they are not going to go the route of adding it to existing cameras. They are only going to produce specific cameras will have it.
Well, hell, then the mystery continues, I guess. So
yeah, I mean, you can this organization. They've told us you don't need to do that.
Yeah,
but
they did
Leica has determined that that's the route they want to go. So. Boy, so that was an up and down story. But let's move on and talk about
joyfulness overall. The conclusion: yes, Sony did it. They did firmware. Yes. We should all be happy instead of ending it on a like mutter down note. Like, this is great. I'd like to see more of this.
Here's another happy story though that we could talk about that might end on a down note. Up note for the consumers, but down note for Nikon. So Tamron's going to bring out the excellent 28-75 f2.8 version 2, the G2 series. This is now coming out to Nikon Z mount. And of course, that is quite interesting because word on the street, wink, wink, is that the Nikon 28-75 is the first version of this Tamron lens, which is a perfectly good lens, but not as good as the G2. So what does this now mean with an updated version coming to a mount that's going to be potentially better optically than their own?
Well, I mean, the big thing is the pricing. They're launching this at $1,000 US, and up until this lens was announced, the Nikkor version of the old lens was going for $1,200. So I was about ready to just go online and be like, "No one buy the Nikkor because the G2 is now available," and immediately Nikon dropped the price, so they're at parity now. But again, we've compared the original version of this to the G2. The G2 is significantly better. So for the same price, absolutely get the Tamron. I'm sure a lot of people will wind up scooping up the Nikon just because they're going to want to stick to first party lenses. But this is one case where I would say there's really no advantage to doing that.
And, this lens has been out for a while. So, it kind of makes me think the back end, there's nothing stopping this lens from coming to the Nikon Z mount before this, other than maybe there was some agreement between the companies, right? Maybe Nikon's like, look, we'll license your lens, but you got to let us have it on the market for a while before you release yours. I mean, who knows? Who knows?
I'm just curious, why... Did something change? They chose not to license this one then. Obviously, they chose not to license this one. So, did Nikon decide, it's not worth it? It's fine?
I'd love to double check the timeline, but I really feel like it was the G2 shipped almost immediately after the Nikon version of the first lens. So the G2 wasn't even available at this point.
But you have to think Nikon knew that. They're in conversations with Tamron.
Yeah.
You would think.
And Tamron's like, we got something better and bigger coming. Yeah, I wonder what the process was with that.
Well, but maybe that was the agreement, right? I mean, maybe that was the hard negotiating, is like Tamron saying, look, we'll let you use our older lens. It's still good. You can license it. We'll hold off the market for your mount for a while, but who knows? Who knows? But yeah, if anybody has held off on getting a Nikon 2.8 general purpose zoom, or if your existing Nikon 2875 fell in the toilet or something and is irreparable, then
that's a very specific situation.
Yeah, like what?
That doesn't.
What are you taking pictures of?
Have any of you?
You know what I'm taking pictures of, and I've dropped the lens like 4 times.
We have a huge audience. If anyone has dropped their lens in the toilet, I want to hear from you.
I bet it's happened more often than anyways.
I bet it hasn't. No. At any rate, this lens will be available. Let me see here. I can't remember the exact timing. It doesn't say. Maybe it's available now? No, there's no way. I don't know.
Maybe we don't want viewers putting their comments about toilet cams. Anyways.
Just next month.
They don't have to be public. Just email us all directly.
Yes, along with photos. This is interesting. This is interesting because it's a very good lens. I mean, we've been talking quite a bit about how third-party manufacturers, we can't really talk about them in terms of third party anymore, right? I mean, the sort of stigma that comes with that, where they're going to be cheap lenses, they're going to be, budget minded stuff. Well, now these lenses are here in this case literally better than the first party option.
Yep.
All right. Let's talk about how Ricoh will do literally anything except release a GR4. So
talk about how tall your hair is. Why is your hair so tall?
Okay, you want to take a short break and talk about how my hair is tall? It's tall because it's long, and it's long because I'm not at home, and I'm not going to get a haircut by anyone except that cuts my hair normally. So it's going to get longer.
But it's twice as tall as mine, and there's no gray, and it's not fair. Anyways, I'm sorry, Ricoh.
Did you lower your seat to accommodate the framing of your hair this week?
Because look, mine's already top of the frame. Dude, are you using the L'Oreal 24-hour remix?
Oh, of course. It's in there right now. Yes. Yeah. We use the same hair gel for anyone. It's not even a gel. I wouldn't say it's a gel. It's like
it's a fiber putty, and it's amazing.
Yeah, it's very good. I like it. But you
look
can
what
see
it's doing to his hair. It's amazing.
If you're only listening to this, I'll describe it. But for those who can see it, Chris's hair responds very differently to it than mine does. Like I have a soft look, and Chris's looks like high tension wires.
Yes, my hair is high tension wire.
It's like petting a porcupine. If you see, few of you will get the opportunity that I've had to touch the top of Chris's hair, because it's weird if you just do it on the street and you see him. But let me assure you, it is just as pointy as it looks.
My daughter stepped on some of my hair after a haircut, and it went into her foot. And she said, "Your hair is inside my foot, Daddy." And it was not a pleasant experience. It's sharp. It's like if you took a high tension steel cable and you unwound it, and then you said make this somebody's head.
Mine is soft, and so at any rate, this has nothing to do with anything. Just Chris.
All the
Chris has
Ricoh
ADD.
fans are losing their minds right
Yeah,
now.
so
like, I
Ricoh
want to hear
actually-
about this camera.
Ricoh actually sent me a private message, and they're like, "Can you do anything possible to delay talking about why there's no GR4?" So that's I was compelled to do so.
Well, I'm going to unfortunately take us back there. So Ricoh last week announced the GR3 HDF and the GR3X HDF, and these are essentially GR3s with some software filters in there. And this is for a camera that is already difficult to find. They are sold out. Most of their designs are sold out. They've made, I don't know, I can't count how many they've made, but they have made so many versions of this camera over the last
Limited
few
editions,
years. Limited editions, which aren't that limited because they're available to purchase normally after a while.
But
the
cute
stuff
colors.
that tends to, yeah, I like the colors of a lot of these, but in this case, they don't look different on the outside. They take differently imaged pictures. I'll put a link in the description below for anyone who wants to actually go see what the difference is. They have some side-by-sides here where you can tell kind of what they're doing. It essentially is, what would you say, blurring or smearing the light?
Well, so this is the thing. You mentioned software. This is actually a physical filter that replaces the ND filter. So that's something I love with those cameras. They have a built-in ND. They're swapping that one out, and it's very similar to like a black Pro Mist filter that was the trendiest thing in the world 5 years ago. If you showed up at a video shoot without a Pro Mist filter, you would be ostracized by your peers.
Yeah.
So basically what this does is, yes, it gives you kind of like a softer edge to highlights, which makes it look a little bit more
dreamy,
film-like, cinematic, while still having like
ND
good
filter.
midtone.
You lose the ND filter. Yes. This is a special
like this
version.
less than I did. I like ND filters. I thought this was
You know, it's
software,
funny,
which would have
though.
been fine.
Jordan and I are sitting in the car driving, as we always do, and talking about this new thing and looking at the photos. I believe I did actually say, Jordan, I was like, you know what? That's actually kind of neat. I can see the application, but of course, everything is a night cityscape with street lights. During the day, this would just look soft. Right. So if you're going to do night cityscapes, if you're going to do 80s style weddings, 80s style portraits, that kind of maybe, but yeah, it's kind of a one trick pony. It is still, it's cool. It's cool that it's hardware based, but it is still Ricoh being like another strange version of their camera.
Yeah,
right?
I think it's cool though that you'd just be able to toggle it on and off. Like, hey, does it work with this shot? And you're physically shifting that around. And the other thing too to remember with this kind of diffusion is it really impacts the highlights, but it's not like an 80s style look to your mids and shadows. So skin tones and things like that still look quite nice with this. I mean, their examples are pretty extreme.
Chris.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you're still going to get a softness to the overall photo. But yeah, you're right. I mean, that's why it's all cityscapes, right?
They're going to have something really dramatic to demonstrate this. I would love to play with it and find out how extreme.
But what I'm saying is, like, in a well-lit scene, like on a sunny day, your photo's basically just going to look like soft, dreamy effect, right? So if you have someone there, like, standing in the sun, the whole thing is going to be soft. No doubt. So... Again, 80s portrait, honestly.
We'll have to try
I would like a GR4. I don't know about you guys. I think it's time.
GR4 would be cool.
The thing is, though, if not that, maybe just more GR3s. They are impossible to find. And I feel like adding more SKUs, it doesn't make it easier.
Yeah, right.
As soon as they sell out of these, how many of them are they making? And like how many at a time? I just want these to be more available.
Did they run out of ND filters and they're just like, what else have we got in the bin? They're like, we got all these black Pro Mist filters because it's not trendy anymore. And threw those in.
I just want a menu system that doesn't visually look like you're playing the first Zork game. That's all I want.
So just text. They do have a nice new menu system on the K3 that's never been put in another camera.
Yeah, but the K3, we're talking Ricoh. No. Pentax and Ricoh have different menus. Pentax menus are fine, but Ricoh, it's straight up like, it's like exploring DOS. I like, where do I put in like CD directory /W? I have no idea. It's terrible.
dir/P. See your options. Yeah.
For what it's worth, if anyone from Ricoh is listening to this and they're wondering why we're being so hard on them, we're not. We actually really like this camera. We want it to be available, and we'd like a new one with some upgraded features. We're just begging for that. That's really what
I'm sure it's coming. I mean, now that the Fuji X100 series is doing what it's doing, I mean, everybody's going to jump on this bandwagon. So, and Ricoh actually
Ricoh's
has
been
a very
in on
similar.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they are in
they've
on.
been
You're
there.
right. You're right.
But they just can't produce enough of them.
Yeah, we need more. We need a new one.
All right, last thing that I want to mention for the week, guys, it's time to salute to one of our favorite people in the industry. He has retired. Most people will not know him because he really only works with media, but his name is Mark Weir. He has been at Sony for something like 30 years. I can't remember the exact number. I will get it at some point. But Mark has been the tech mind behind everything we could ever ask about Sony, about any product whatsoever, forever, for as long as I've been in this industry. And he will be missed. He is an outstanding person to be around. He is so much fun, and he has an encyclopedia of knowledge on technology, not just Sony's technology, but just camera technology in general in his mind. Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to Mark.
Great dude, loves beer, shares his beer,
loves beer,
really nice.
Does share his beer,
and it's nice because it's you're on these talks. We go on these calls where we're learning about new products or whatever, asking questions, and he's great because, and not to disparage anybody else, but Mark is great in where you can have this person doing the presentation and then you ask him even very difficult questions and he'll give you the science behind it. He'll tell you exactly why. It's rare that he's like, oh, we'll have to get back to you. I mean, he's not just like good at presenting, he knows his stuff. So an amazing resource and an expert in photography. And so, very, very not sad to see him go. I'm happy. He deserves it.
He deserves to retire. It's time.
But we have lost an important resource in the industry for sure.
Yeah, I mean, when we're in San Diego, we'll probably track him down and grab a beer. But one other thing is, it's not like he was just presenting the new product. Like, he was there for that transition of Sony moving from like not a major player in photography to one of the biggest players. And you'd bring up things like, I remember the Sony R1 we wanted to do an episode about. And he's like, that was like, I was involved in the development of that. That's one of my babies. And he's got a Sony camera museum in his house, so he just plucked it out, sent it for us to go shoot one of our unsung cameras about that thing. So not just someone who was like on the Sony marketing side, but also a lot of input on them going from like 7th place in photography to now, bouncing back and forth with Canon for number 1. They've made huge strides.
And he'd actually listen to people. Like, that was the other nice thing. He'd always listen to your suggestions and take them under advisement. Now we got firmware updates.
Do you think he just hand wrote the firmware and he was like, here's your firmware, I'm out. And then
so
packed up a box and walked.
Mark Weir trivia for you. Do either of you know the first Sony department that Mark worked in? It was not in cameras.
I'm going to say Walkman.
Chris?
I don't know. I'm going to say appliances.
Jordan is correct. He was on the Walkman team. Yeah.
Oh, man.
There you go.
Yeah. So on this note, the reason I'm bringing it up is
That's why when he walks, he doesn't skip.
Jesus, that was, decent joke. I have an open invitation to Mark to join us as a 4th guest member repeatedly on this podcast to talk about technology. I'm allowing him to enjoy being retired for a little bit first, but he has expressed interest in joining the PetaPixel team in some capacity because I think he doesn't want to give up on being involved because he likes all of us. So hopefully all of you all will get to meet Mark Weir soon. And Mark, if you're listening, it's
congratulations, buddy.
Yeah, congratulations on your retirement. Come talk to us sometime. Okay, let's move on to the main story, and I'll kind of lead into this one because I it's very close to me. But for anyone who has been to the website in the last few days, you may have noticed that my father passed away last week. So throughout the production of this podcast, there have been certain episodes where I wasn't there. Like, there's like, I'm off this week, or there was a family emergency or whatever. And it was me coming down here to see my father, who was dealing with, he actually had 3 different cancers by the end of it. He had 2 different like blood-based cancers. And then the one that got him was a skin cancer. And so that's why I've been here at home, is I decided to come spend the last few weeks with my dad. My dad was an exceptional street photographer who did some incredible work during the 1970s on film. And I look at his pictures now, going through them, the ones that he's printed, and he's printed a bunch. And I am in awe that he was able to get some of these shots tack sharp on film in the 70s. I can't even get some of these pictures today as well composed and a shot as well as him. But I wrote a story about my dad, and I encourage anyone who's interested in seeing his work. I'll put some of his pictures up in the podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see some of his work. But I encourage you to go look at those pictures in the story that I wrote, which I'll link in the description below. But I wanted to sort of segue this into talking with you guys about the importance of printing, because there are a few things that my dad really left. And some of them are, I'll hold them up right now. Here's his Nikon F. This is one of his 2 cameras. And this is the one lens that he had here, which is his 28 f3.5. The other ones I've shown already on this podcast. Those ones are at my house. And then his child, really, the one that he shot almost everything on is this. This is his FTN. This one is a non-operable right now. And I'm actually trying to find somewhere to get it fixed and repaired. I want to get these both like refurbished and repaired. But besides these cameras and some of his digital cameras that he has here, the halls of this house are filled with his framed and matted pictures. He developed all his own film, and then he matted all of his own pictures by hand. So I wanted to ask you guys about what you thought about the value of printing, because I think it gets lost nowadays. And if you're not going to print for yourself, maybe print for the people that love you, because there's something there that's left when you're gone.
Well, I mean, that's such a beautiful part of the story is this was really a connection, to his work, right? And to stuff. And I've only met your dad once. It was a very short trip. It was a lovely drive, though. I had no idea he was such a talented photographer.
Yeah. And most people didn't actually. I'm getting that a lot. Is like a lot of people didn't know.
Yeah, I mean, you said oh, my dad, was a photographer back in the day, and I assumed hobbyist or had some stuff kicking around. But the work when you published that caught me completely off guard. Oh, yeah. It is beautiful work,
and he's traveled a lot. Killer mustache. Did take a picture. Did take a picture in a toilet, and it's a beautiful picture. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm just saying, I'm not crazy.
Yeah. That picture
actually didn't drop his lens.
That picture has the perfect place. It is currently above the toilet in the guest bathroom here. So when you're using it, you see the toilets, and it's just perfect. My dad always thought that was great, and I loved it too. Yeah.
But yeah, it's beautiful. This is a sort of experience that I'm sure a lot of people, and I mean, my kids included, haven't had really, where we all had our kids' photos and travel photos and memories in shoe boxes, 4x6s, the occasional large print, but really it was kind of left for people who were talented photographers, right? Or you'd be buying other people's work. But that's how we consumed those memories. And it's kind of, it's fun to go through that whole experience and see it. But a lot of people now, it's completely digital, completely screen-based.
Yeah.
So I think there is something to be said for just the tactile experience of looking at a print, but also having that connection of not only being able to view the image, but where you place it in the house and what you see as you're going through a person's space and the memories that brings up, I think is magic that we absolutely can still do today. But you're right, it's an art that very few people are doing now. And that's sad.
Yeah, I mean, my place does have a lot of photos in it, but my wife is actually pretty diligent about printing. And also the camera store regularly does staff galleries, which is wonderful incentive. Is hey, let's go get some stuff. I was just checking. Yeah, right beside my desk here, I've got 2 of her prints from when she was in Tokyo that we need to find a new home for. So that's a reminder to do that. But I am bad in that, I don't print very often. I definitely have photos that I make sure whenever I move hard drives or whatever I know are backed up, but I don't do it nearly enough. And if I have empty space, you can see a lot of the time I'm just going to slap a movie poster up there, which is honestly not ideal. And again, like you said, Jaron, your father leaving you top-notch prints, which you also told me these are his selects. I think making that decision of these are the photos that are important to me is absolutely worthwhile. And it's actually been kind of a kick in the pants for me this week, which is why I think this is such a good podcast topic is, if there's a few photos that I know exactly where they are and on all of my hard drives when I grab something, then those are probably things that I should also have up somewhere in my house or even just archived, print them on good paper and Yeah, do that. And, I don't have a photo printer anymore. Because I found I was doing it so rarely, but we have, there's great printing places, especially here in Calgary, like Resolve Photo, do amazing prints, and we've worked with them before. I don't know why I'm not doing this. So yeah, it's a good reminder.
You're lazy.
Yeah.
The thing that I that really made me think about this the most is when I was walking. So like when I say that the halls of our house are like literally a photo gallery, I'm not exaggerating. There's a hallway that leads through this whole house that goes to all the bedrooms from like the main like living area, and that hall is lined with his pictures that he printed and matted and framed himself. And I think what made me think about that the most was I was like, well, what are we going to do with these? I'm happy to take them. And my mom was like, no, I want them. And I want to put them, like, even if she doesn't stay here, this house is very large for her. She's going to put them in her own. She wants to enjoy them. Yeah. She wants to look at the pictures that remind her of my dad. And there are a couple she doesn't like as much as like if you look at the picture, she doesn't like Treasure Hunter, for example. There's another one that I haven't found the original of that one yet. My dad's organization was not great all the time, so I only found some of his selects. But there's another one that's printed here that's like entering Coppola Village in Mexico. And it's just like a street, and there's just like horse poop going straight down the middle. My mom doesn't love that picture, but I think it's great. And there's a couple others in here that I like that, and so I'll probably take those and put them in my house and enjoy them myself. And nice. I think that's what I want people to think about: is what happens when you're not there? How do you want people to remember you? They're not going to remember you on a screen like that. Like I did go through my dad's pictures, and I saw them on my computer, and they were far less powerful looking them on a screen than they were hung in the house. And the way they're framed and their size and the way you can appreciate them and see them in the light with your own eyes really is a lot to take in. And it's a really good reminder of the people that you care about. And I think there's another issue that some folks might have. It's like printing your own pictures and putting them on your own walls like that is like self-aggrandizing. Like, why don't, you can put pictures of your family and whatnot, but people who put their own art on their own walls, they might feel like that's kind of weird. I assure you it is not. People who visit the home and it would love to see it. And I've had people who've reached out and be like, I had no idea he was a photographer, and they want to come see his gallery, and they're welcome to. And it's like, you should do that too for yourself. And there's nothing wrong with appreciating your own work. Like my dad every day would walk down these halls and see his pictures, and it would remind him of his experiences in his life, and that would make him happy. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I don't think you should shy away from it if you're afraid of, or just like thinking it's silly to do that. Don't. It's worth it.
Well, my grandfather on my mom's side was an avid painter, and it took up so much space. It was like an entire room of the house were the paintings. So we got them scanned very well, and then had photo books made for all of the kids and grandkids. So same kind of thing. If you're worried about this taking up a huge amount of space, just get some smaller prints of them made that you could maybe distribute as well. I think that would be a good option. Although, of course, like a large print makes a lot of sense. And I really go back to, like you said, scrolling through the images, Jaron. I think if someone says this picture is important, you're going to take more time to look at it and determine why that is. If it's printed big, that's going to make you, look around, try and figure out what the context was, more so than just flipping through and being like, oh, that's pretty. Oh, that's, I like that composition. Yeah.
Oh, very nice.
Usually Chris has something to add. I was waiting to see. But.
Well, if you want me to, beyond the beauty of it being a memory, and we were talking about this connection with our families, which is very important, but even from an artistic standpoint, I've always felt that the print is really kind of like the proof in the pudding. If it's sort of your last step, and it's interesting that we kind of reach a point where you say, oh, we're going to stop right before that last step. And that's because it is an art form unto itself. There's a lot of skill involved, whether you do it or you get somebody that you trust to do it. Some of the greatest black and white photographers in the film days, for example, had printers that they trusted to be the final stage of their artistic process, right? Because they frankly didn't have the skills to do it, or there was something about the look that person could bring in their photos that they really appreciated. But digital does cover up some issues, and I feel like the print is really that final output to say, look, I did everything the way I wanted to, like whether it be technical, lighting, exposure, color balance, all that kind of stuff. Really, that final print when somebody holds it, that is the real proof in the pudding. So you could even say that photos that aren't necessarily printed all the way to the end aren't quite complete. And I do think there's some validity there. And so doing that is to me that kind of like final step to say, okay, I really did finally finish that artistic expression that I wanted to. There you go.
That does lead directly. I'll read this quote from my dad. He had several galleries that he'd done, and he wrote descriptions of his work or whatever. And so I found he never threw away anything also. So this, by the way, you should do that. Please get rid of things. But my dad never did. I found several things of his from his galleries, whatever. And this was one of the quotes on there, and I'll read it right now. I am often asked what kind of camera I use, as if it's the camera that is responsible for the end product. My answer is that the camera is merely a tool, a recording device, just as the paintbrush is a tool to the painter or the chisel to the sculptor. It's after the photo is returned to the darkroom or opened in Photoshop that the artistry begins. The art is in the creative activity of the artist in the studio. What you see hanging on the wall is the result of art. This is true of any medium. So my dad agrees with you, Chris.
Yes. Unless it's a Pentax. If Pentax are the greatest cameras of all time, and please don't.
I do like that we opened this by discussing which cameras he left.
Yeah. Well,
very nice.
But I like them. So actually, on that note, the cameras that he has left to me, after I get these cleaned and restored, I think I'm going to shoot film again. Just to enjoy that again.
Absolutely.
I think I want to, and I'm not gonna. I mean, I could make a dark room in my house if I really wanted to, but I'm not going to. I will send out the film to get developed. And
have you had that experience though? Have you been in the dark room?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I
remember that's he discussed his wife in the context of the dark room last week, I believe.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. You guys. Yeah, you guys were naughty in the dark room. Yeah. I mean, if anybody who hasn't had that,
really good.
If you haven't had that experience yet, and I'm not saying, you are. I'm saying you're missing out. But if you haven't had that experience yet, and you're like, oh, I really want to, I cannot urge you enough out there. Find a resource to be able to do that, whether it's like a community college or something nearby where they have a darkroom facility, or like an analog photography club or something. If you even have a small inkling of wanting to know what that's like, you absolutely owe it to yourself to get in the darkroom and have that experience. It's truly magical. It's one of the last.
Convert a section of your basement, use a bathroom you don't use very often. Yeah, can be done.
It's straight up one of the last magical experiences that you can have in photography like that.
Yeah, I'm really glad I had that opportunity a while back. And also, I should point out, like, if you know someone who's very good at refurbishing old camera equipment, or if you know any good darkroom spaces in Portland, reach out in the comments so we can follow Jaron on this adventure.
Tell me what film shop I should go to go purchase my film and work with someone who can be a developer for me. And if you know anyone it could be anywhere in the United States, really, I'm happy to send this anywhere. I'm curious who can do a full refurbish and repair of 1970s cameras.
Was it an F2 and an FTN?
So it's an F, just an F, and an FTN.
Oh, the first F. Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. So these both need, like, my dad, I don't know what this was. He put something sticky on the bottom that needs to get removed. I don't know if I want to remove this or not. My dad, those old school style, like, labels you could make with it's plastic that would punch a letter into plastic. It and then it would stick. He has one of those on here. I don't know that I want that removed. Part of me does, part of me doesn't. I don't know. I haven't decided yet, but there's like little things on this that need to be like tidied up and cleaned. The camera, this one, the F that I'm holding right now, still works. The FTN does not. So, and I think the FTN's light meter is also busted. So there's a lot of repairs to make on it.
You'll probably need like foam repair too and stuff like that. So
yeah. So anyway, if anyone's got anything, what's neat about this one actually, Chris, is it still actually says Nippon Kogaku Tokyo on it.
Nippon Kogaku, yes, I know. Yeah. Don't get me started. It's pronounced Nippon, by the
way. Okay, well, I mean, you guys know, everyone who's listening should know what I've been up to this past week. It's been an emotional week for me. But what have you two guys been doing?
Go ahead, Chris. Mine. I did some family stuff. I'm going to take a pass this week.
Oh, what? You're going to take a pass? Okay. Well, I got this little plant. Look at this little sweet pea growing. This is indicative of springtime because finally it looks like the freezing death hell hole is over here in Alberta, and we're going to be back.
I think we're expecting quite a bit of snow later this week.
Shut your dirty mouth, you dirty. So anyway, so I've got the green theme going on for the rebirth that Jordan has just crushed. But it also reminds me that it's going to be time to clean up and get ready for gardening, and that's going to be happening here in the next week or so. The other thing that's been very interesting that I've been back to is there's a YouTube channel that I used to watch.
It looks like we're going to have flurries on Thursday, Chris.
It's not his fault. It's not Jordan's fault. You can be mad at Canada.
No, it's
Sorry, you were saying something good and smart.
Yeah, I was saying something good. So there's this great YouTube channel that you listen/watch, but you can actually listen to it, and other people might know it. So it's called Scary Interesting. It's a Canadian guy who does it. Really cool stuff. It's like crazy morbid stories about horrible ways that people have died or almost died, but it really is quite fascinating and it's beautifully produced. And his voice is very soothing, fellow Canadian, and he's been at it for a while. And if you want, I would definitely have a listen to it. Scary Interesting. He's got lots of stories about like super deep dives and he does a lot of research to really make sure that what he's talking about is very good and very accurate as far as he can.
Which episode should I start with, Chris? Give me one.
There's so many. I mean, some of them are horrifying. Like a lot of the cave diving stuff, it's really meant to like spook you out. And I mean, the Nutty Putty disaster is a pretty good one to start with, Jordan. And if you still don't get scared after that, then go through all of them. So some are like really interesting stories of survival or near misses or mysterious deaths. Some of them are like, this guy got himself wedged into a cave upside down and it was a harrowing experience. Yeah, it's terrifying, but it's really fascinating. So I highly recommend it. Highly recommend it. And oddly enough, I've been like listening to it right before bedtime, and I'm not sleeping any worse than I normally do. So
yeah, if you thought 127 hours was a romp,
that is Teletubbies compared to some of the stories that are going on in this thing.
One thing I will say that I have been doing, in addition to mourning the passing of my father, is last week I used the Logitech Mevo Micro Four Thirds camera for my webcam here. I am back to using the Canon because I really think the quality as a webcam is better. But I don't actually think the Mevos are very good as webcams. They're actually behind me. Right, here's one and here's the other one.
Oh man!
I actually put them outside in the environment that they are designed to be in. I think they're designed to be used like outside and stuff like that. I pointed them at a wood pile in the back half acre of my parents' property where there are some ground squirrels living. And I was in this room and I could zoom the lenses from the iPad app. I could move it around. There's a thing where you can actually do a crop of the frame, even if you're zoomed already. So it crops in and you can like pan around and it digitally pans beautifully. And the footage looks really good. I'm really surprised how good the footage is. I think that these are fantastic for like that sort of thing. If you've got like a baseball game outside or a football game and you want to like broadcast it, the apps are super easy to use.
So the most artistic security cameras of all time is what
they are. Excellent security cameras. I mean, the battery also, I can confirm the battery lasts all day easy. Like I had that thing out there all day on and off recording, just sitting there being a camera, and it did just fine. So I'll write a full review of this eventually, but I do think that these are cool cameras. And
if people are watching the YouTube version of this, can they look forward to ground squirrel footage?
I can put some ground squirrel footage. I can put some ground squirrel footage in here. Yeah. Okay.
There's. You can't just say. You got to show it. Oh,
okay. Man. I'll go pull it off the camera. I actually downloaded it from the camera to my iPad remotely using the Wi-Fi from this house. Like it worked pretty well. So yeah, sure. I'll put some ground squirrels in. There's going to be some heat distortion from the range because I was pretty far away from them, so you'll see some wobbling. But you can clearly.
We're not going to have that because thanks to Jordan, it's going to snow next week.
Yeah,
so.
Jordan's fault. It's going to snow.
It was my choice.
Perfect blue skies out here in California right now. Okay. Let's move on to tech support, of which there are a lot. We may not get through them all, but we're going to try. We're going to do some emails first because we've been very speak pipe heavy the last few weeks. But right now we have a question from Bruce in Victoria, BC. You guys love Victoria. And this is actually A question for Jordan Drake, Bruce writes. I was wondering about the lighting, temperature that you are using on yourself and the background during the PetaPixel podcast that I am watching on YouTube. Jordan?
Yeah, so it's a little bit complicated because the Elgato capture card that I'm using dumps pink into the signal. So if you look at what my camera is capturing, it is actually quite different from what goes into the computer. So I do have a custom white balance for that. But let's suppose that's not a factor and we're just looking at Kelvin color temperature. I've got a 6,000 Kelvin LED softbox, right? Oh, I'll dip it in for people watching on YouTube. Oh, yeah. I set it to cloudy white balance. So it's just slightly warm because cloudy would be about 6,500. And then I've got 2,700 Kelvin sitting behind my computer there with Apple's floaty goldy thing, which gives me a nice warm tone. But yeah, it does always, it looks quite yellow, my entire frame, but skin is only about 500 Kelvins warmer than the camera expects it to be. So I don't know if this is a criticism of my white balance or a compliment.
No, people.
I think they like. Don't know. I think you look good, and they're saying you look good, and they want to replicate how good you look.
I mean, I did get a compliment from Matt Lloyd last week, so that was something. Yeah.
There you go. Giant softbox right next to your face.
Yeah, that's always the key. Always the solution. Yes. Get that softbox closer.
Yeah.
All right. Next one is an email from Wolfgang. He writes, here in Germany, the weather has been improving. Spring has arrived and the sun is making a more frequent appearance. It can be tempting.
Story Journal wreck it. The Ice Wizard will destroy that for you, Wolfgang.
It can be tempting or even required to shoot against the sun for certain scenarios. It may be attractive to shoot against the sun. Shooting against the sun can sometimes help you with beautiful images. At the same time, the internet tells us that caution is advised to not shoot directly into the sun and to avoid that on your equipment, lens or camera. So is this a concern to be taken seriously? Is there a difference when you're shooting a DSLR or mirrorless? What's the right approach to deal with this in practice? And what kind of potential damage would be suffered by the equipment, if any? And how could this be detected and how would it show? As always, your advice would be very much appreciated. Now, Chris, the lover of the Sun Star, doesn't seem to take this particularly seriously, but I am curious what you have to say. Because before you speak, actually, there were several articles I've seen published over the last couple of weeks because that eclipse is coming, and they're saying don't even shoot the eclipse directly with your smartphone. What do you think of all this?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So let's start with DSLR versus mirrorless because there is a difference there. So a mirrorless camera, of course, if you are going to focus on the sun, that light is being focused right on the actual sensor itself. And yeah, that can absolutely damage the sensor given enough time. Doesn't even take that long. So with the DSLR, it's a little bit different. When you're focusing the camera, you're focusing light onto a plastic view screen. Still equally bad because what you're going to do is melt your view screen, but you're not going to damage
your eyeball
the sensor
looking
itself.
Through the viewfinder.
Yeah, not to mention the fact that you've got light going right through. So on a DSLR, actual light is coming off a mirror onto the view screen and then into your eyeball. That can be really bad for your eyes. When you're looking through an EVF, there's not really any way for the sunlight to reach your actual eyeball. It's a digital representation, although it can still be incredibly bright. But often I am still like peeking my eye away from the EVF, my actual eye looking for the sun position, trying to get myself right on the edge where a sun star will be created so I can test that for you guys. And yeah, it's not good for your eyes. Honestly, you got to be careful. You got to be serious about it. I mean, there's plenty of times where I'm like, for a second afterwards, I'm like, everything's purple. That can't be good. So definitely, I mean... Look, you can shoot towards the sun, absolutely. But the idea is like you got to be quick with it. You don't want to leave it in prolonged situations, especially like having the camera on a tripod where the light is focusing on one point for any length of time would be really, really bad. So, the occasional shot towards the sun is not going to do anything to your camera or you, but do be careful. Certainly setting your camera up and doing long exposures and stuff, that could really damage things. Otherwise, do take care of your eyes. Like you do have to be careful, which means don't become a YouTube camera reviewer. It is it is important.
Specific
I don't know
advice.
about much. Yeah, I don't know about much damage to the lens, but certainly, yes, there have been stories of people burning out their sensors, damaging their optical viewfinders, their pentaprisms and view screens, because all that's focusing then onto a plastic view screen.
You can get solar filters that are designed to cut that quite a bit. Yeah. So like for those
but
who are
real
wondering,
solar filter, you can barely see through, right? So, I mean, it's a testament to how powerful the sun is and how careful you have to be. The solar filters are like, they're basically opaque to the human eye. So if it's not opaque to the human eye, it's probably not safe to put in between and stare at for a long time.
The big thing to remember as well is, if the sun is in the same area on your sensor for a very long time, that's when that damage can occur. And the natural thing you think of there is time lapses. If I am doing a time lapse with the sun, I'm not shooting it on a telephoto where the sun is occupying a huge portion of the frame that's going to get cooked for a long time. I tend to do it more in a wider area. The sun will move through the sky. I can say I've never had a sensor personally damaged from exposure to the sun, but I did work at a camera store and we did see them absolutely from time to time. Especially lasers are very bad as well if you do a lot of live music. I've got a camera I rented recently that looks like it was damaged by a laser. Just little pink blobs all over everything that I shot with it. And
then those photo sites will never respond the same way after they're burned out. Absolutely.
Yeah. So just be very selective when you're shooting, a very bright light source, and try and, recompose regularly. So it's not nuking the same part of the sensor for a very long time.
Okay, let's move on. This is another email from Joe, and he writes, "Hey, PP Pros, it's Joe from Ohio.
No.
Love the podcasts and videos, and as a beginner photographer, you have been a great resource for learning. This summer, I am going to Anime Expo in LA, and it will be my first time having a real camera to photograph the event and for general photography in downtown LA, mostly pictures of my food. I can appreciate that. I'd like to be able to take wider angle shots of the event itself and the streets of LA, but also be able to take pleasing photos of cosplayers and friends while in a space-limited, crowded venue. Not necessarily portraits, but rather full body shots, as the outfit and props are generally the main subject rather than a headshot. I'm trying to decide what lens would be best for this purpose. I'm trying to keep my gear light and small due to the travel involved and in crowded areas. I use the Sony A6400 and I have a Sigma 30mm f1.4 that I use as my general purpose lens, but I'm afraid to just take one prime because of the lack of versatility and would rather not do lens changes in a crowded expo. I agree. I am considering the Sigma 18-50 f2.8 for this because of its small size, not bad price, and versatility. Is f2.8 good enough for indoor work, or should I stick with the 31.4 and maybe another prime? Is the extra reach and optical stabilization on the Tamron 17-70 worth the extra cost and size? Are there any other options? Sorry for jam-packing this question. Thanks, guys.
These are good questions. We actually do go to a lot of anime conventions, and they are very crowded because Jordan loves anime. I don't know if you know that. I mean,
huge fan. Biggest of the three of us, easily.
Yeah. Jordan's even one of these guys who's like, it's not anime, it's anime. He's very particular.
And not manga, manga. Yeah.
Manga. So Jordan loves these things.
I did see Boy and the Heron in theaters this year, so I don't know why I'm getting singled out. I mean, certainly I am.
You're such a fan. So we go to these things and they're crowded. And so there's a lot to be said for that 30mm 1.4. I like that option insofar as you can soften the background or blur out the background quite a bit because they are very distracting.
Yeah.
Not as much. Yeah. And the tough part is, even with the crowd, like if you can move to somewhere where the light's better and maybe it's off to the side where it's not so crazy, that could be really helpful. But I get it. Usually the person's right there. You want to take a picture. It's hard enough getting people to not walk in front of the camera. A 2.8 zoom will be fine for indoor work. I think that'd be no problem. You crank your ISO a little bit, you'll be fine. And having image stabilization can help, but really the fact that you're shooting people anyways and they're moving, it doesn't help as much as you might think. So a 2.8 zoom, I think, can be very flexible. It'll also let you do sort of head and shoulder stuff from a little bit farther distance, where the Sigma 30mm, it's not quite as good for that. But both.
How about the 17-70?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. It's a great lens.
Yeah, but, I like the 1770. That 1 mil of extra width is actually really useful if you're doing full body shots, especially, a lot of people will have, big costumes and things like that. This is my plea to Sigma or any other manufacturer. My answer to this for years was the 18-35 APS-C zoom lens, and there is not a mirrorless version of that. And if someone makes it, it will sell like hotcakes. And Jordan knows that because he's a huge anime fan.
I think Kazuto mentioned. I asked him actually that recently about because that was my favorite lens easily for
legendary
years.
lens.
Yeah, and he knows that, and he's like, well, okay, so now that has this huge, like, larger than life legend around it. So they're hesitant to do it, and they also were like, well, we wouldn't want to just do another APS-C lens like that again necessarily. They would want to try and do it in full frame, and that lens would be enormous if they did.
It would.
Yeah, but that was the appeal of the lens. It was the full framatron. You'd get full frame depth of field on a standard zoom on APS-C.
I think they should just APS-C it. There's plenty of great APS-C cameras. Put it on a Fujifilm lens mount and a Sony E-mount, and people would be so happy with that lens.
Tamron, Takina, one of the Chinese companies, please make that lens.
Yeah. Hopefully that was helpful, Joe. We're going to move on to another email from Jan. Sony has Android knowledge in-house, so why not add it to the camera software and have it offer a known API to software developers? It would transform the camera to a platform for creative software developers and have a current camera software benefit from all the built-in features of Android. So basically, why are we not getting an Android operating system on a standalone camera? And we could ask Samsung that question because they already
Galaxy NX. Nikon too. I think it was like an N200 or something. People have tried that. I've played Angry Birds on a camera. It was pretty cool. I mean, I do think it makes a lot of sense right now. I'm surprised no one has taken another stab at it more recently.
And it's especially since you can put Snapdragon Qualcomm chips. You can do that. But I think it's just a matter of licensing costs. Like these companies, what maybe they want to control everything on their end, and I can fully understand that. Yeah, but
I mean, cameras don't necessarily have the ergonomics to do that very effectively as well. I mean, the screens you'd want them to be larger than in some cases if you're going to apply it that way, and they're just not. Like we've kind of reached a plateau of how big a camera screen can be on the back of a camera. So, I don't know. The connectivity would be nice. I think we'll probably see that more, but I don't think it would, even if it was Android, it would never be like a phone interface. And I don't think it should be, but certainly having some features like the connectivity aspect, people have always talked about having like a cell chip or like
that's the big thing I was going to say. It needs a SIM card. Yeah.
In your camera would be kind of cool. I'm surprised that hasn't been done up to this point. Probably just because people would end up just like,
then we can biometrically lock the cameras and make it less of something someone would want to steal. Like you can put a thumbprint reader on those things, and then you could remote. But also, people
just start looking at reels, and they got their camera sideways looking at reels, and then they're not even taking photos anymore, right? So
this seems like an old man shouts at sky situation. But it does. I do think the biggest issue.
It's a drug, and we all know it. You all know it. We all do it. We all know it. It's a drug.
It's got to have a SIM card in it, because could you imagine, like, you all know the tedium of trying to get your phone talking to your camera? If every time you were trying to do anything on Android, you had to go through that process, it would be nightmarish. And I'm guessing that's why those other products failed. So someone should do it. Absolutely.
Okay. Let's do a speak pipe. This one is from John Baker. Let's listen in.
Hi, Chris, Jordan, and Jaron. This is John Baker in Louisville, Kentucky. I shoot mostly wildlife with my Sony A7R5. However, I really enjoy bringing a compact camera with me for family and landscape photography when I don't want to bring my fuller setup. I've considered a compact wildlife camera, but I don't know if one exists. I've thought about the Sony RX107, but I haven't had a chance to try it, and I honestly just don't know how it will compare to something like a Galaxy S23 Ultra. Do you know how these compact cameras compare when taking telephoto shots? Also, just wanted to say that I used to live in Cochrane and Calgary, Alberta, and watching your videos are deeply enjoyable and nostalgic for me. Thank you guys so much for all that you do.
Wow, John Baker from Calgary. That's fantastic. I also want to congratulate Jaron, because when he was reading this off for us, he said Louisville, Kentucky, which is how you're supposed to say it.
Louisville.
Great job.
Louisville. Lewis.
Great job.
Vile.
Yeah, it's not Louisville. It's Louisville.
Louisville, Louisville. No, those are bad. Those are bad. But I did get in trouble for saying Nevada last time. No, Nevada. I said Nevada, like it was like a spring water company. And I'm sorry, it's Nevada.
Anyway, can you help him with his question?
Oh, there's a question, right?
Yeah. Do you know of any compact wildlife camera? He asked specifically about the RX107, and I don't like that camera personally. I haven't liked the RX100 series since the 4, but that's just me.
I mean, the Panasonic LX series cameras are quite nice too, right? So they do have some with like a 10 times zoom. It was kind of, we played
What's
with
that
those.
Nikon one that has the absurd zoom? Nikon.
The P1000
that's a
series.
big body though. That's the one drawback to it. You can, however, use it to prove that the Earth is flat. Apparently, still
That's
waiting for confirmation on that. But
no, it is flat. We all know it.
But I would love to see.
Stop it, Chris.
The big
I've
zoom
been in
series.
I
Go
saw
ahead,
the ice
Chris.
wall.
No, don't.
No, so the Panasonic LX100, like if you want it's the LX100, I'm pretty sure.
Nope.
If you want a compact camera, that is very compact, like a pocketable camera with quite a bit of reach. I've used it, and it's been a long time since I've used it, and it does absolutely have the reach. It's still not like the best camera for wildlife. I still feel like you want something that focuses well, shoots quickly. The RX100s, I know Jaron doesn't like it, but they do actually focus pretty decently.
Oh, they focus really well. I just really hate that lens.
Yeah, I know.
So, Chris, it's the ZS200 is the one that you're thinking of.
Thank you. The LX100
for the big zoom Panasonic camera. I think we're so overdue on someone looking at these lines again, because like that Sony is using the old terrible menu system, and the Panasonic I think is like 8 years old at this point. So it'd be nice to see something with good phase detect autofocus. Yeah. There is a market for it because your smartphone super tellies are kind of. Even the Samsung, which is the most impressive, is not very good at the extreme telephoto. Not as good as a 1-inch sensor with a big zoom in these compact cameras. So yeah, unfortunately, you can grab these, but they're getting pretty long in the tooth. I think it's time to see.
Yeah, these companies aren't making them anymore because I don't think they sold particularly well. And so like there's this weird in between where it's like you want to make a lens with a fixed, like a prime, like a 35 prime, which is what Ricoh does with the GR3 and what Fujifilm's doing with the X100 series. But then there doesn't seem to be as much of a cool demand for something that does what you're asking for, John.
It's hard to hold them steady with those long telephotos, and again, they're not the fastest shooting cameras and stuff. I think that was also very frustrating. So any comparison to wildlife shooting on your A7 or 5, it's not going to be anywhere close to as convenient or as nice. I would even argue, although they're not very compact, the big bridge cameras like the FZ1000 series or the P1000. They're at least effective at that. And I mean, you save a little bit of size because you don't have to take a huge lens, but it's not pocket sized by any stretch.
Yeah, I would add the RX 10-4 to that list as well.
Yeah.
Great. That's my favorite of the kind of bridge super zoom cameras, which again is very long in the tooth and needs an upgrade, Sony.
All right, we'll do one more. This one is a speak pipe from Michael. Let's listen in.
Hi. I'm a landscape and nature photographer, but I also like to record 30-second video of the environment I'm in. The video is for me only. I don't post it anywhere. I purchased a Zoom H5 and record sound while my X-T5 is recording the video. I chose the H5 because it has an XY mic so that I can pick up sounds from all around rather than just what's in front of me. I'm not sure if that was correct thinking, but that's why I chose it. The sound quality is good, however the mic is bigger than I'd like. I can't put it onto the hot shoe of my camera because the size prevents me from using the viewfinder, and the digital display on the mic faces up so I can't see what's going on while recording. It's a bit cumbersome and I've stopped carrying it with me. I watched your video, Jordan, on microphones from a few weeks ago, but I'm not sure any of those would be right for what I want to do. I just want to keep it simple, small, and good enough to capture sound from all directions. Is there a microphone you can recommend for this? Thanks.
So Jordan and I didn't talk about this before getting in here, and I
just saw it written on the document, and I'm like, damn it, he swiped it from me.
I put mine in there because I have this microphone, and I use it specifically for what you're saying. I've used this at concerts to capture ambient sound of either the crowd or the entire show. It works great. My recommendation, and apparently Jordan agrees, is the Rode Stereo Video Mic X. It is designed to be hot shoed, and it is incredible. This is one of the best, basically, environmental microphones that I've ever used, as considering like the mix of sound quality and size. It's really, really good. Jordan, would you like to add anything to that?
No, I love the sound from that. The design is fantastic as well. The only limitation to this is there's no internal recording on it, so it's got to be attached to your camera while you're using that. If you are looking sometimes just for like sound effects and things like that, I do like the ability to remove the microphone if that's the case. It's an old mic, but the Zoom H2N also will sit vertical on your hot shoe, gives you very nice stereo sound and a display that you'd be able to see. But it's not nearly as elegant a solution, but it's about half the price, and that would get you internal recording. So,
and to answer your earlier question that you put in there, lav mics like we were showing in the review, no good for that. They just won't capture that ambient sound.
Yeah, it's mono, and they're really designed to only work with vocal frequencies.
Yeah, but not this one. The Stereo Video Mic X is
that mic slaps.
Yeah, it's so good. I can't recommend enough. And it's mentioned that you can't do internal recording on this. You have to have it plugged into something. If you're recording with your Fujifilm anyway, then your audio will just be synced. So I feel like that this is a better solution than what you were currently doing. That's me personally. Maybe you'll think otherwise, but that's just what I think.
Yeah.
All right. Hopefully that helped, Michael. Let's move on to the section called Never Read the Comments, which is where we make sure to read every comment. And I've got a few from
we call this the Raven section now. It's the new name.
Yeah, we've got this very avian focused right now because Jordan has what?
What does Aoyagi Aicho say to us here?
On behalf of the Council of Ravens of Canada, the COROC, I hereby file an official complaint to PetaPixel to position to cease and desist the ongoing bullying of the superior avian species. Also, I'm really happy about this wave of super zooms. Versatility can only bring more people on board with photography and video. But on the first thing, I actually am glad people are speaking up about this because I find ravens
Jordan
and crows,
is a monster. I've always said it.
No, incredible birds.
Do not get started about how these are very intelligent birds. They're smart for a bird. For a bird, Jaron, I'm not impressed by their ability to remember where they left a twig or something like that. And the important thing about ravens, they're just big black blobs when you photograph them. They are visually uninteresting. And that's why I said another stupid raven when Chris took a picture of it. There's nothing compelling about putting a raven in your photo. And if all of them suddenly went extinct, I'm sure it would be bad for the ecosystem and everything would collapse. But for a little while there, I wouldn't be like, oh man, I'm really missing the ravens out there. Ravens suck. I stand by this. And you know what? I'm tired of just hearing from the raven lovers. I bet my other raven haters are going to join in with me. Show your support. I want to hear from all of you.
Nobody hates ravens except you.
No, except you. Yeah, that's super weird.
They imprint on human faces. They'll bring you objects if you leave them objects.
I don't need a bird to bring me an object. I need it to look pretty in a picture, and they're not doing a good job.
They've got close cousins like the magpie, which are incredibly intelligent, that are visually
also
more
ugly
striking.
birds.
Oh my gosh.
It is a dream of mine, and I'm going to try and do this soon, to make friends with a crow. I don't think we have ravens. I'm sure they're around, but they're not as common as crows. And I want to make friends with one and trade with it. Like I'll give it food and it'll bring me baubles. I want that. It sounds to me that is a nightmare for you, and that makes me want to do it even more.
Just a black stupid bird showing up
for every bird that you won't befriend. I'm going to befriend two.
Perfect.
How did you feel about the original goth movie, The Crow, Jordan?
I think what happened to Brandon Lee is very unfortunate, which makes it even sadder that the movie has a stupid name about a stupid bird, and it cost an actor their life to produce it.
He's
so
really
much tragedy in that family. Yeah.
Wow.
I think there was a second part to that question. What was it, guys?
It wasn't really a question. It was just a statement. This is about, we've gotten some super zooms. I believe this was on the Nikon, the new Nikon lens.
Panasonic and Nikon. Yeah.
They're just happy about this new wave of super zooms and saying that basically versatility is a good thing.
You can capture stupid birds with your super telephotos. It's great.
All right. The next one is, I wanted to put this in here because we specifically have already answered this, but Dan Duke says he is begging on his hands and knees to hear what Chris thinks about the OM150-600. He's the only person whose opinion on a Micro Four Thirds he trusts.
Went live.
You should. The video just launched as of the day we're recording this, so it's out there. Go watch it. That's the full
I'm sure
review.
Dan Duke will have seen it already by the time we've published this video. But we're just letting you know, Dan, we knew.
Yeah, to give you a quick thing, yes, it's very clearly the Sigma Sport 150-600. Therefore, it's quite large and bulky for Micro Four Thirds. Optically, it's quite nice, little soft at 600 millimeters wide open, which means I have to stop down, which is always an unfortunate thing to do on Micro Four Thirds, where you need as much light as you can get. Otherwise, focus is quick, rugged, nice optical behavior. I mean, there you go. You don't really have any choice. That's the other thing. You really don't have any other choices, and it does give you a tremendous reach. So there's
the 1200 millimeter equivalent's insane.
Yeah, it's cool.
On this point here, Fielding Smith, Jordan, wants to know that given you had it with you, was there no testing done with it on the G9 II? One of Micro Four Thirds' strengths is still being able to use different brands.
Yeah, I didn't use, I mean, I don't use extreme telephotos very often. But the Sigma 150-6 was a fine video lens. Breathes a little bit. The motor is quite smooth for tracking a subject. You know, it's not the fastest motor out there, but for regular video work, it'll do a nice job. I just didn't retest it with the OM specifically because I did use the 150-400 OM f4.5 when we were in Idaho to shoot dogs far off in the distance, and that lens was wonderful for it. So it was overshadowed, and the 150-600 could never live up to that perfect experience. So I didn't give it the opportunity.
Wow. But yes, why don't we? I think what he's asking is, why don't we test like the Olympus 150-600 photographically on Panasonic bodies and vice versa? And part of it is because we want to show off the lens in its best light, which is the body that it's intended to go with, or the brand that it's intended to go with. But absolutely, at the same time, I do recognize that the cross-platforming is one of the strengths of that. It's going to work fine. I mean, really, you're not going to see much difference other than
you'll lose sync
the
IS.
focusing characteristics of that body and the fact that you're not going to get sync IS, which is not that big a deal. I mean, the lens-based image stabilization is still going to work, or body image stabilization, and it's still going to be very effective. Sync IS doesn't give you that much of an advantage, so happily use it on a G9 II photographically if you want to. It would work great.
Yeah, it's just not fair for the testing of the lens, I think, because you could bump up against some incompatibilities.
I do recall in that Idaho situation, you weren't fully smoothly agreeing to use it when I asked you, Jordan, why don't you use that zoom lens on your Panasonic? You're like, because it's not gonna. Well, okay, fine. And then you did it and loved it.
Yeah, I did. Okay, so point, Jaron. I'm glad we could detour so I can quickly say you were correct. That was a good call, and I appreciated both the shooting experience and the results I got from it.
Okay, I'll take that. We're moving on back to another avian related statement. This is an email we received. It's not really a question, but this one is from Lasse Arvidsson, and they emailed us, and I wanted to read this to you. And I'm going to put a picture up for those who would like to.
Are you going to do it in a Scandinavian accent, though?
Can you?
I mean, I'm not going to, but I want you to do it.
Then no, I'm not going to. Okay. Lasse says, I live in a Nordic country where our forefathers, you probably call them Vikings, I call them explorers, believe that the wisest god of them all, Odin, had two ravens, Hugin and Munin, that he sent out every day to check what's going on out there. Hugin was thoughts and Munin was memory. A bit hard with the translation there, but that's about right. So when Chris mentioned ravens, Jordan's favorite bird, in the new Nikon 28-400
They're not my
review,
favorite bird. They're bad birds. Go ahead.
I came to the conclusion that Hugin and Munin exist, and PetaPixel is Odin. PetaPixel sends out Chris and Jordan to check out what's going on, where Chris is Hugin, thoughts about gear, and Jordan is Munin. He documents so we can remember. Just some weird thoughts you guys got me into, but take care out there and behave when you see two ravens, simply because they will report to Odin what you guys are up to. It was a nice thought, and I thought that was cute. So
right,
I shared it.
There's even
and
a
Jordan's
lovely photo
wrong
he
because
sent of ravens.
I can definitively state that I am in no way representative of a raven. I will not be described as raven-esque. I'm not going to stand for it. And it's ravens suck. Go ahead.
I love it, and I'm fine with PetaPixel being our all-father. And it's a lovely picture here of ravens that they sent with a tree that is very indicative of the tree of life in Nordic mythology. And,
which is named what?
Yeah, Isidril, I believe, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
Yggdrasil.
Yggdrasil.
Yeah. Yggdrasil. I'm not Scandinavian, although
don't you Photoshop my face onto these ravens, everybody listening to this. If you do, so help me God.
Vikings,
Go ahead.
Thanks to the Vikings and their exploration, all of us with some Caucasian blood probably have a little bit of Viking in us. So there you go. Because they did a great job exploring every culture they could find.
Last one of the week is from Grog Hunter. Great name on YouTube. I'd love to see a video or at least hear some thoughts on this subject. So this is where you're going to get it. This is where the thoughts are going to be heard because they're probably not going to do a video on this. There is a small but vocal minority of OM system wildlife shooters who claim that the 40-150 f2.8 Pro coupled with the 2x teleconverter is not just a niche setup, but so good it has become their everyday setup and outperforms most other options with similar focal ranges, such as the 75-300 II. I am, to put it mildly, a bit skeptical and would love to see a more objective test of that combination, as well as some general thoughts on if teleconverters still deserve the bad rap they've inherited from older models.
Well, we can answer the second part of that.
Well, look, I mean, to be honest, we haven't really tested that setup, so we can't definitively speak on it. At the same time, the 40 to 150 2.8 we do have and we have shot, it is very sharp at 150 wide open. And honestly, modern teleconverters are so much better than again, a lot of the stigma that we have in towards photographic equipment today carries over from like the 70s and 80s when teleconverters were objectively garbage. So modern teleconverters don't cost us really much optical performance. Certainly light. Your autofocusing performance may be a little bit slower, but you're still getting a 5.6 equivalent with the 2x. I think I have no reason to doubt that it wouldn't absolutely be fantastic optically, even with a 2x converter there.
Yeah, we've used that converter with the 300 f4, and it's
great.
It's outstanding. Yeah, I think that's the big thing. Don't be scared of teleconverters. I can't speak specifically to that combination. That's why we were looking at Costa Rica pictures right before this. Like, did we ever use that combo? No, we had a 300 f4, which is a glorious lens that costs way more than that pair that you brought up. But yes, that 150 or the 40 to 150 has a great reputation. I really like that lens a lot.
Jordan would happily shoot that combination with ravens, crows, magpies, anything in that sort of genre of bird.
I'd shoot colorful dumb birds.
Them out.
It'd be great.
Seek out those crows and ravens.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's going to do it this week. I do want to say that if anyone's wondering, like, why, like my father passed away last week, why am I here? Well, because my dad loved this podcast. He loved my work that I do at PetaPixel, and I wanted to come on here and do this for him. So I'm gonna crank the camera, gonna fire the shutter, and this one's for you, Dad. So thank you. Thanks everyone for listening this week. We'll see you next week. And if you've got any opinions on where I can get this camera all refurbished and made nice again, let me know in the comments.
Or if you want to send any comments to Jordan about ravens or anime,
don't do that.
Please put some pictures of your favorite pictures of ravens. Link us in the description below and or in the comments below, and I'll make sure to share them with Jordan. I'll make him
become a nightmare.
He would love Tengu. He would love Karasu Tengu. Please send him.
Keep his eyes open. What's that movie on Netflix where they made pull their eyes open so they look at the horror? Is it Bird Box?
Oh, like Clockwork Orange?
Yeah. No,
but nothing but pictures of birds. Yeah.
At any rate,
and he's just sitting there in a chair, and he's like, ravens, magpie. Yeah.
What a great episode.
35mm lens.